Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast Podcast. I am your host, Kris, as usual, and I'm joined by my partner in crime on a Sunday night. It's Mr. Ross Bramble. Good evening, Ross.
Good evening, sir.
Are you well? Are you happy? I know it's been a tough week for you.
Yeah, but I've been satiated by some great wrestling, so I'm doing okay.
That's the main thing, yeah. If you can have suitable distraction, if all else is failing around you, that's what I find works. So we will come on to your boys a little later. But for those of you that are used to us and know all about us, then you'll know that the season is underway. We've done two of these, in fact, already. And we're back to normal service now, Ross, aren't we, on a Sunday night of going through the English Football League and the English Premier League from the weekend just gone. So back to our normal Sunday slot after a brief hiatus to Monday last week. So for any new listeners, this is what we do. We sit here, we talk about the games that have just gone by and pick out some interesting things for you. So let's crack on then, Ross. Shall we start? We'll actually start at the start of the weekend because I believe there's something. Basically, it's like a preface now that when you say Manchester City, you can't say Manchester City. You have to say Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. I seem to remember us doing this with Mourinho and all those years ago, but that seems to be what you have to say. So Pep Guardiola's Manchester City went to the hideously named Bet365 Stadium, otherwise known as Stoke's home stadium, and ran out 4-1 winners in the early game on the Saturday. Is it just me that thinks they're looking a little bit frightening already?
Kind of, but I still think 4-1 flattered them against Stoke. I don't think Stoke were brilliant, but I don't think Stoke were bad enough to get tonked 4-1. But you know, this is what happens with Pep Guardiola teams. I suppose they find space and they take their chances and pick people off. But yeah, I'd be interested to see them against other opponents. I'm looking forward to seeing them against West Ham next week. I'm looking forward to seeing them against some of the bigger teams like Chelsea and Man United. So I don't want to read too much into Stoke and Sunderland, and let's also remember that Sunderland was a very, very near miss. They almost drew that. So I'm not too worried about them just yet, but certainly the signs are ominous.
Agreed. And in that game, we saw two penalties given by Mike Dean. Sorry, he looks like Jasper Carrot. Two penalties given for holding / tugging / not really doing very much, but looking like they were doing something. I thought the first one was a penalty. For the Shawcross one, I'm one of the few people that thinks Ryan Shawcross is an absolute liability of a footballer, but he was given for a clear shirt pull. The Raheem Sterling one, though, was that a case of levelling it up, or was there enough in that for you to deem the new rule applicable?
There wasn't enough in it for me, but I'm still glad he gave it, because I still want to see it stamped out, because we see it all the time. You know, I think you could pick out 2 or 3 players that are just awful for it in the Premier League, and Shawcross is definitely one of them. John O'Shea is another one that I've got an issue with. So I'm glad it was given, because it's clearly, you know, clamping down. But I thought that one was, realistically speaking, a little bit harsh. Even when this rule comes into effect and everyone understands it and gets used to it, I think that will still be considered a bit of a harsh one.
Yes, it's definitely one that we'll have to keep an eye on. The descent rule will come on to another game in a minute. That's another one that seems to be kind of a hot topic since these new rules have come in. And just on Stoke, very briefly, I mean, we know from Manchester City, obviously Aguero bang in form, they look the part. But Stoke, a lot of people have said they'll be all right, they'll be fine. I'm not so sure. To me, they look a bit. I don't know if stale's the right word, but do you know what I mean? They just look a little bit
like they're lacking something.
Yeah, and almost like they've carried over that form from last season, like Palace almost. So, do you think that's fair, or is that a bit harsh?
I think it's a little dramatic to say they're going to be in any trouble this year, but certainly they do lack a bit of spice. I know they were missing Shaqiri this weekend, but even when he was in the team last weekend, they didn't look brilliant. So I would agree that they're not looking like a team that's going to be challenging for Europe anytime soon. But I also wouldn't be on the same kind of level as Palace, who I think we can all agree are going to be in a bit of a sticky situation this year. Sunderland, West Brom. I still think that Stoke have probably got enough about them, and they've got a very good manager in charge. You know, he didn't do very well at QPR, but he's still a very good manager and knows his stuff.
Yeah, I think that's again a very, very fair way of putting it. Very fair way of putting it indeed. But we shall see what happens with Stoke. They are certainly one to keep an eye on. I think moving on. Let's go on to the Premier League future winners because we all know this story. Team that nobody fancies down at the bottom. They're all going to struggle, and then they win the Premier League. That's how it works. I think that's how Leicester did it. So by that reckoning, Hull City will be your Premier League champions this season. They did it again, didn't they, Ross? They went to Swansea, rocked up, defended well, kept organised, scored 2 good goals, and there they are, proudly at the top of the Premier League on 6 points. So, do you think this is just almost a siege mentality? You know, it's just all or nothing, and that's why they're getting results, or is there a bit more to it than that?
No, it's the calm before the storm, unless, as we were saying on the preview pod, unless this takeover comes and they can get some new bodies through the door. But with, what is it now, 2 weeks to go, less than, to the end of the window, it's not looking likely. Even if someone does come in and takes ownership of the club now, it's going to be very tricky to get the players in that's going to push them on to the next level. And more to the point, what kind of players are you going to be able to attract at Hull in the situation they're in at the moment, you know, with this late in the window? So I'm not convinced. It's a great start, and I'd love to see them do well because, you know, I tipped them to come up from the Championship because I thought they were the most Premier League ready team. I thought they were the team that was going to be able to do the best out of all the clubs that were in that top 4. So I'd love to see them do well, but if it stays as it is, obviously they'll have players back from injury, but I don't think that squad is anywhere near deep enough to do any more than, you know, fight against relegation.
Yeah, it is a tough one, and again, as I say, it was very much a case of sort of sitting deep and taking the chances when they got them. That said, in Abel Hernandez, who I know a little bit about from his days in Italy, I think he's a different player to the Abel Hernandez that I think he was there when they got relegated, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he had the ridiculously long hair, if you recall.
That's right, with the thing in his hair. That's right, the old bandana. I think he's a better player now for his year in the Championship. You'd have seen him last year tear up the Championship, and I think in him they might just have not a 20 goal a season, but maybe a 10, 15 goal a season striker, and that could be the difference. Would you agree with that, maybe?
Yeah, if you look at the other teams in the relegation zone, it's like I'm thinking of West Brom are going to be down there. You think of the kind of teams that came up as well. Burnley, I like Andre Gray, but is he going to get the goals? We don't know yet. Is Middlesbrough's strike force going to get the goals? We'd like to think so. We don't know yet. So to have someone that, much like Jermaine Defoe last year for Sunderland, is going to make sure you get at least 10, 15 goals, that's a great asset. And there'll be a lot of teams in the relegation zone this year that are kind of thinking, well, why haven't we got someone like that?
Yeah, the goal scorers. They're kind of at a premium, aren't they? Even the big clubs are finding out it's hard to get a hold of a goal scorer. So, good luck to them. Anything you want to say on Swansea? Any concerns there? Because again, they're another team that look like they're kind of scratching for form at the moment.
I would still only question if Guiglin's the right man for it. I don't think he did brilliantly when he came in last season. I think he did the kind of job we'd expect any manager to have done with the Swansea team that was there. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him, but I've not been overly impressed with the way he's done things at Swansea. So he's now built a more Guiglian team. So I'm happy to give it time, but I'm still iffy on whether or not he's the right man for the job personally. So I don't think they'll be in any danger of going down, but I still think they'll probably be in and around the fight. But I think they'll still stay relatively clear of it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. I think something will click in getting their striker back. Borja Baston, I think it's going to be quite key for them. Of course, we don't know what they're going to do in the transfer market yet either, so that will be interesting to see. For those asking as well, we will do a quick transfer-related podcast, I'm sure, probably during when we've got the international break. Is that after the window or before?
It's after next weekend, so.
Okay. So I think. The transfer window shuts on the 1st, so yeah, I think it's the weekend of the 3rd. So yeah, we'll try and sort something out in the diaries, Ross. I'm sure people will love hearing us talk about strikers and defenders that haven't gone to places.
And Arsenal,
like Arsenal. Yeah, exactly. Read my mind. Anywho, let's move on to another game. Briefly, Spurs Palace. Not a lot to say here. Spurs got a victory. I think I tweeted about 70 minutes in. I'm sitting back waiting for the inevitable Spurs goal, and up it popped from a very unlikely source. Big Victor Wanyama. Didn't see that coming, did we?
No, he scored about 3 goals for us in the 3 years that he was with us. So, yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a dour game. Palace kept them out. Spurs, you know, it's well documented that a lot of their first team were involved in the Euros and had disappointing spells, and of course they had the hangover from last season as well, where they let second slip. So it's it's tough for Spurs at the moment. They just need to get some confidence going, and grinding out the results that they have been is a great first start.
Yeah. I think that's going to be another sort of thing to keep a close eye on as to how Spurs transition from last season to this season. Alan Pardew, though, getting found out a bit. I think I put rather harsh tweet out, which a lot of Newcastle fans, but weirdly quite a lot of Palace fans were agreeing with on Twitter. A lot of likes for that tweet.
Yeah, but I agreed with it.
You did. Yeah, I
agreed with it because it's the same. If you have Alan Pardew as a manager of your club, you get to see it up close and personal. He plays a nice formation that works the players, but it's very simple. So when he first comes in, it's damage and limitation. He gets the job done. When you're asked to move forward, it stops because he hasn't got a step 2. He's just got a step 1. And that works great when he first walks through the door, but we sacked him at League 1 level because his performances and his tactics weren't good enough to get us out of League 1. So, there was a couple of seasons ago he was tipped for England. No, he plays a great formation, but no, after a while it falls away. And I've said it many times, I'll keep saying it until he shows me what's inside it. What does he write in that little black book of his? Because nothing changes. It doesn't matter how many times you see him with it, nothing changes.
I think my tweet might have something to do with it. I think... shall we share what I tweeted? Because it's not that offensive. I just said, good to see the myth of Alan Pardew is being exposed again. The man is an absolute charlatan. Good for nothing but a stag do, that bloke. So maybe, Ross, maybe he's writing down the next stag do in that black book.
I used to say that he used to draw like a flip book of a stick figure with his head getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That was my guess, because nothing intelligent is written in that book.
Or maybe he's... doing one of those, like when he's doing that dance in the cup final, it's just like images of him dancing all the way down the
Or if it's going badly, just an expletive getting bigger and bigger and bigger on each page.
Yes, I could agree. So we're both on the same page with Pardew then. That's good to know. To any Palace fans listening, let us know. What do you think? Are you happy? Are you not happy? I don't think Christian Benteke will be the answer, but
it'll be useful, but he won't fix everything that's wrong there.
No. A plumber is only useful if you've got a leak. Anyway, let's move on then to Burnley Liverpool, because this was I was really pleased with Burnley. I've got to be honest, and I really like Andre Gray. And to be fair, the Sam Vokes goal, the first one was an absolute cracker. Don't get me wrong. The fact that Liverpool have essentially a child who can't catch his own toys in goal doesn't help. Mignolet, I think it was badly exposed for both goals, but that strike was superb, and Burnley was superb. I mean, it was if you could have put Sean Dyche on the pitch, he would have given you that performance. Would you agree?
Yes, it's precisely the kind of performance that I think will keep them up. And I was talking to Drew about this as well, but he was watching the Burnley Liverpool game, and he was saying how well organised they were. And I was saying this is just Burnley typified. This is why I said that they'd stay up, because it's organised. The manager is part of that team just as much as anyone else. Stephen Defoe came in. Al looks brilliant, fit straight into that side, knew exactly what they wanted from him. Just all the players fighting for each other, knows the system very well, completely comfortable to have only 20% of the ball in the entire game. It was brilliant, and I know they had their issues against Swansea last week. I think they were a bit unlucky to not score because there was some very good saves from Fabianski. But that performance, I think, typifies the reason I think they'll stay up, because they have that in them. They have that solid ability just to keep people out. And if you can keep out a team like Liverpool for 90 minutes, who weren't awful, they just couldn't find the space and couldn't find the shots, then you've got every chance. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. Completely agree. And they're just... the thing that I like about the whole Gray and Vokes partnership is it's two proper... old-fashioned centre forwards, but they've got talent. They're not just workhorses who get lucky. That those goals were proper goals, and some of Burnley's football, and obviously Stephen Defoe coming in. As Drew would have said as well, I've seen a lot of him. He's a very, very good player. And Sean Dyche was quite bullish after the game, saying that he's likely to break his transfer record again before the end of the window. So, Burnley are a club with a huge following and passionate following, and it will be nice to see another club sort of get up, stay up, and consolidate their positions. So we'll keep a close eye on Burnley this season, I think, between you and I. Let's maybe we should just touch on Liverpool very briefly, because obviously last week, all of their supporters were quite convinced they were going to win the quadruple. And then I listened to 606 last night, and now they're all in tears and want Klopp gone. So a little bit of a perspective come back down to earth for them, or is it a blip, or was there things that legitimately concerned you?
Well, there should be things in that performance that should concern every Liverpool fan. Because if you were to ask me who's the most reliable defender in Liverpool's back line, I'd say Nathaniel Klein, and he was susceptible for the first goal. So even he's making mistakes, then something's wrong with the communication and the movement and whatever else. I don't think Dejan Lovren is a leader in the Premier League. I don't think Klavan looks much like a leader. He's still new to this division. I can't even remember who they played on the other side. Was it Milner they started instead of Moreno this time?
At left back, yeah.
Yeah, the defence is ridiculous. It just is. It's all over the place, and the only one that I'm normally confident in is Klein, and he made the mistake for the first goal. So there are definitely things to be worried about. You just have to hope that the team that you're playing against isn't as set up as well as Burnley were defensively, because if you can score 3, doesn't matter if you concede 2 and the defence is bad, you just need to be able to outscore them like they did against Arsenal last week. So they will be entertained, quite a lot of Liverpool fans, I'm sure they will, but at some point questions will have to be asked about that back line, because it's like I was saying last week, Klopp is much like Roberto Martinez and forgets that there's 4 blokes at the back trying to kick the ball out. So they're great value to watch, and when it goes wrong, it's also great value because you still get a very entertaining football match out of it. But there's far too many problems in that back line to start thinking about winning the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, and indeed the midfield, Jordan Henderson in particular, coming in for a lot of stick on social media yesterday, and I felt rightly so. But once again, he's a player that I think I don't think he's a myth, but I just don't really get all the hype, if I'm completely honest.
I don't think he's Liverpool quality, but at the same time, what was he meant to do in that game? Because he's got 2 wingers either side of him, hasn't he? It was Lallana and Wijnaldum, I think, was in the midfield with him. What's he meant to do? You look at any other Premier League team, even I know Arsenal get stick for the way they put their holding midfielders on, and there's always questions about who they're going to be playing. But Coquelin and Xhaka started for you against Leicester. That's great. At least he's got a partner, and they're both the combative kind of player that will break up play. If Jordan Henderson's got someone like Burnley counter-attacking on him, who's he got to look for? He's got to look at Lovren and Klavan, and I don't have faith in them at the moment. So, I don't think he's this brilliant Liverpool captain-esque player. He's meant to be replacing Gerrard, for Christ's sake, and I don't think he's that good. But he's still not, you're only as good as the sum of your parts. And when you look around to the players he had helping him defend and track back, the Lala and Wijnaldum, it's not what you need.
No, and they've passed it with Joe Allen, who, is not Xavi, even though they call him the Welsh Xavi, but I don't think he's any worse a player than Henderson, and they've got rid of him. So it does seem like a bit of a top-heavy team, Liverpool, but we'll see. We'll see how they progress. Obviously, getting rid of Benteke frees up some more cash, so maybe they'll spend a bit more before the window is done. We shall see. Let's move on to another game then. Watford and Chelsea. Now, this was a game of 2 halves. Watford starting much the better. Matsari in this 3-5-2 formation again. Looking very good, looking composed. Went a goal in front, and at that stage were, I thought, fairly comfortable. Capu with another goal, and then 2 late goals. Michi Batshuayi, I've seen obviously quite a lot of. He popped up after Gomez, a bit of a fumble, should have held that. I felt the goal there, and then Diego Costa, who I want to focus on quickly because for the second game running was on a booking and then should have been booked a second time, wasn't, and then went on to score the winner with 3 minutes to go. So it's a bit of a habit. Do you think it's going to bite them in the backside at some point?
It's going to have to. I think the plus side of it is that the bookings he's picked up twice in a row has been dissent. I think that's a good sign. It shows a certain level of consistency. Referees get things wrong, and I don't begrudge them getting things wrong. The dive, I can't think of what it was last week. Was it the tackle on the fullback on the goalkeeper? Yeah. They're bad incidents and they're things that should be picked up on, but sometimes referee miss things. So it's just sheer coincidence that Costa's been missed 2 weeks in a row. The good thing is that he's been booked twice in a row for dissent, because if this had been in last year, he would have been booked every single game, I'm sure of it. So I'm glad to see that he's getting the dissent bookings. The rest will come, because he is that kind of player. Next week, he won't be missed out on. He'll do something else, and the referee will pick up on it. So it's a matter of time before it turns around. I know Conte said after the game that he needs to stop yelling at the referee and stop getting those dissent bookings, but I don't think you can take that out of his game. So it's a frustrating coincidence, but I think it is just a coincidence.
I'm still not. I might be completely nuts here. I'm still not completely convinced that he'll be at Chelsea beyond this window. I don't know why. Just something. Conte after the game was sort of saying, we've told him, we've spoken to him, and the first one he has to stop, but the second one we don't think was a booking. And just the fact that he even brought it up, I thought it was very honest, but it was also a little bit telling, I thought. And I just wonder if maybe a trip back to Spain is still something he might consider, but we'll see. One thing that wasn't lacking was Conte's sort of tactical nous, so substitutions, particularly that of Cesc Fabregas coming on and changed the game, and obviously Batshuayi going in as a two up front. Do you think Chelsea, arguably, I think I said it pre-season, they're my tip for the title because no European football, they've got a very experienced coach, they have got a very good squad of players, and Eden Hazard seems to be bothered this year, so are they maybe a sleeper for the title?
Yeah, I think we both agreed on it, didn't we? We both said that Chelsea were going to be our picks. I can't see past them personally. I know the obvious contender is going to be Man City, although Man United I think have been very quietly brilliant in their own way so far. But I think the fact that they don't have European football, they're going to feel like they've got something to prove after some of the individual performances last season. Hazard especially looks already like a player that wants to prove people wrong from last year. So yeah, I think if you think it's a silly notion that Chelsea will win the league, I think you're really missing out on something here, because they are very, very good tactically. They've got a very good shape, and for the second week in a row, they've managed to pick up a result in a game that looked like was slipping away from them.
Yeah, it's the mark of champions, as the old cliche goes, isn't it? But you mentioned Manchester United. I'm sorry, Ross. We can delay no more. We have to go into the Friday night game, which did see your beloved Saints go down to a 2-0 defeat at Old Trafford. Again, of course, Manchester City's or Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. We now have to call Manchester United with Paul Pogba. That's now what you have to call them. He made his debut. I thought he was all right. He was tidy. I didn't think he was anything spectacular, but it was a certain Swede that undid you. But did you feel, taking off your Southampton hat, that maybe the result was a little bit skew-whiff because Saints had the better of the chances? I thought.
Even with my Saints hat on, I think. Well, the overriding message coming out of Southampton after that game was we feel unlucky to have lost that. We feel like we should have drawn that. And if you miss the game and you just look at the stats from the final score, you'd say, well, you lost 2-0. How do you even think that you're unlucky not to draw that? But if you watch the game, I thought we looked very composed. I was worried we were going to get absolutely tonked against Man United because it's a tough place to go in your second game in a new country with a new team. So I was really worried that players like Pogba and Ibrahimovic were going to turn up and absolutely nail us to the wall. But Jose Font coming back in really helped the defence reorganise. I don't think Matt Targett is a brilliant left back, so we need Ryan Bertrand back. But I thought Jose Font did a great job with Targett. I think it was just individual errors in the end, really. I mean, the first goal, I was thinking to myself during the half that Stephen Davis hadn't had a great game. He was misplacing passes, a couple of air shots. And then, lo and behold, when Matt Targett does his weird one-legged slidey tackle thing that he does, the space opened up behind for Rooney, and Stephen Davis is the one that's not tracking back quickly enough to close down the cross, which then comes in for Ibrahimovic. If Stephen Davis is on that a little bit quicker, maybe Rooney doesn't get that kind of quality ball in, and once it's in there, then you can't stop Ibrahimovic. I've only seen him against Bournemouth and Southampton, but I can already tell you if it's in the air, you're not going to beat him in the air. So I don't have too many qualms about that. It was just a shame that Stephen Davis didn't close down Rooney quick enough. The second one was a penalty. Jordi Clasie trips Luke Shaw. There are Saints fans saying that there's not enough contact in it, and I'm still yet to see an angle that shows definitive contact, which is enough to send Luke Shaw down. But when you're as fast as Luke Shaw is, then a clip is going to be enough to take you down. So it's not overly surprising. But yeah, we still created enough chances. It was just lacking in the final third. There was a final ball, a proper shot. It just didn't click at the top. So we've got Saints fans panicking and saying that Puel's going to get sacked and we're going to get relegated and all this kind of stuff. But I thought there was plenty of positives in it for us. And as for Man United, they weren't brilliant. I didn't think Pogba had a particularly great game. He looked nice in spells, but certainly didn't look £100 million worth or whatever it was he ended up going for. So I don't think they were brilliant. I don't think they fully deserved 2-0. But at the same time, that's what Mourinho teams do. Some people call it boring, but it's just efficient. They got the goals, they got the result, and they just kept hold of it.
I must say, as a neutral, I did think Saints were worthy of a point, mate. I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? Because United were very good second half, and once again, I had a little chuckle to myself at all those people that said Zlatan would be a massive failure. Granted, it's 2 games in, but he's shown me more than enough to suggest that he will be absolutely fine in the Premier League. And I do like Matt Targett. I do think he's. Obviously you know more than I, but I think he's a player. I think he will be the next sort of good thing to come out of Saints Academy. And
I think Matt Targett needs to move further forward. Because if you watch him play, his crossing's not brilliant. It's not there yet, but it's still very good. I know back in the day, before Luke Shaw broke through, I know Matt Targett was held in higher regard than Luke Shaw. So clearly there was, a lot of good feeling backstage about Matt Targett. But you watch him defend this weird slidey thing he does. If you go back and watch the opening goal, I can't think of who was on the ball when he went into tackle, but he does this odd sliding tackle where he drops to one leg. I think it was his left leg. He kind of bent, dropped to one leg, throws out his right leg to try and get the tackle. If he wins the ball, he can get up super quickly with that. But if he misses it, for some reason, it just takes him even longer. I don't understand it, but it's cost him 3 or 4 times. It's cost him penalties. There was one last season against Chelsea where he brought down Cesc Fabregas with that kind of tackle because he hasn't perfected it yet, whatever technique he's trying to throw in there. Brought down Cesc Fabregas, and thankfully it wasn't given. He's cost us there because he didn't commit enough. If he'd stayed on his feet, he could have just hounded him and shielded him a bit more, but he's gone for this weird tackle thing that he does. So there are issues. At the same time, he does look good going forward, and there's clearly enough about him for the academy to be very high on him, and Puel has obviously put a lot of faith in him already. So it's a tough one. I don't think he's going to be a defender for the rest of his career, though. And if he is, he's going to be like Moreno, where you're going to fear every single time the ball comes down the wing.
Or Klein, I suppose, is another one, similar transition, attacking fullback. But I like what I see. And trust me, Saints fans, don't worry. Claude will be fine. He'll get it right. He's people forget it's a hell of a transition when you first come into a new country, a new job, and it takes a while for your ideas to get across. I think Claude will be absolutely fine. So.
I think 2 brief things to add to that. A, his English is still getting there. If you listen to his interviews, they're quite tough to listen to because his English isn't perfect yet. So that will come in time. That will get better. The players will understand him better. The second thing is that style's going to be brilliant in the Europa League because if we're doing all that travelling and it's possession based, it's going to be fantastic for a set of players that have never been through all that travelling and going to all those different climates and all those different countries. So I still have faith in him. It's 2 games in. He's got the same record that Koeman did after his first 2 games. Let's not get too worried just yet.
Don't panic. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's leave your pain there. Briefly, West Brom Everton. I know there was 3 goals, but not a lot else happened. West Brom, I said I tipped them for relegation. I haven't changed my views on what I've seen from them. They won 1-0 up through a set piece. Shocker. And then Everton transformed themselves second half. Lukaku came on. He's obviously announced that he's going to stay, which probably means he'll be sold in 2 weeks. Everton, obviously under your friend, Mr. Koeman, changed the game, but I want to kind of focus a bit more on West Brom because, as I said, I did tip them to go down. They, for me, are a side that are desperate for signings, but I think they're 4 or 5 short, not 1 or 2. What do you make of them?
I think that's what Pulis said as well, wasn't it? He said he wanted 4 or 5. I think he said that last week, and then in the press conference he had this week, they said, how many do you need? How's the transfer going? And he said, I still need 4 or 5. So, I mean, you'd think with the new ownership that there'd be money to spend, but clearly they're not willing to put in the millions that clearly the fans are going to want. They are short of something creative up front. I don't mind them at the back. I think they're quite tidy at the back. Most Tony Pulis sides are, so they don't worry me too much at the back. But it's the kind of instance where if you do find yourself conceding 2, you never feel like they're going to have a second in them themselves. They could score 1 every single week if they wanted to, but if teams like Everton are going to turn up and get 2, you just don't have the same kind of faith that they will end up getting a second, which I think the last time they had that was when they had Tieve up front. I can't think of the Spanish guy that was in charge of it, Pepe Mel. When he had Tieve in, that was the only time I really thought that they looked like they had a comeback in them, but under Pulis, it's keep a clean sheet or nothing, and as soon as that clean sheet goes, you just don't have any faith in them bouncing back. So I do agree they're going to be in the bottom half if they don't get some signings in, but I'm still not concerned enough to say they'll be going down, but certainly they have the potential to be.
Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part. Maybe I'm supposed to be impartial, but even so. The final game of the Saturday programme was Leicester's 0-0 draw with Arsenal. I don't have too much to say about this. I doubt whether you do too. It was a kind of a tale of maybe a couple of penalty shouts. I thought the one on the one late on was more of a pen than the one early on, but I didn't think either of them were particularly penalty worthy myself. And Jamie Vardy had another one of those days where he couldn't hit a cow's backside with a banjo. Arsenal looked good in spells, but never consistently good. One of those games that just neither team wanted to lose, having lost their opening games. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think so, but at the same time, I'd also say it was a game where they just lacked the quality to win the game. Because I thought Arsenal's greatest strength this week was the back line. I know I've got a man crush on Rob Holding because he came from the Championship, but I thought he and Koscielny were absolutely brilliant.
Agreed. Yeah.
The front line just looked a bit off kilt. You know, just without Giroud up front, it just kind of felt like it was a bit off. Because I'm no Arsenal fan, but I know Sanchez is not a striker, so what's he doing there? I would much sooner have seen Walcott there. I know that's blasphemy to some Arsenal fans, but you know, at least he can play that role, and we know he can play that role. I think every Arsenal player looked good in spells, but it just didn't click as a team. The Leicester side of things, I think this is the kind of team we expected them to be last season, or at least the kind of team we expected them to be at least once or twice last season, and they just never were. They had this incredible momentum. Now, I don't know if that's because Kante's gone, that they suddenly lost control of games. Maybe I'm reading too much into the first two games they've had. But, you know, Vardy looks an absolute shadow of himself, and to think Arsenal were going to spend £30 million on him, there'll be some Arsenal fans saying, thank God we didn't. So they're an interesting unit, Leicester. They'll be fascinating to watch, especially if they start playing like that in the Champions League. They're going to get absolutely tonked. So they have to improve, they have to get better, and I'm sure they will, but they almost look like a team that's still hungover from last season at the moment. And as for Arsenal, I think it'll come together as it always does. Arsenal normally start slow and then come good around Christmas time. And not to tempt fate, but there's still a couple of weeks left in the window. I'm still of the opinion there'll be something done. It might just be a centre back, but I'm still of the opinion something will be done. But I was also listening to your other mediums and your other podcasts that you're involved in over the weekend. It seems to me the problem isn't so much the incomings, it's more the lack of outgoings. You know, because if you got rid of Theo Walcott, someone would come in to replace him. But there's a lot of faith in Theo Walcott. He stays on the wing, he stays up front, and nothing's ever done. So that's a debate for another day, I'm sure. But yeah, they're both very interesting teams. There were good signs of both of them, but certainly I think there are more concerning signs for Leicester than there were Arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. And with the news, Joel Campbell has gone Sporting Lisbon, and the talk is that the deal for Shokran Mustafi is likely to be completed this week. I think, as you rightly say, I still keep my faith that Arsenal will make a couple of signings. I actually think Leicester will still be busy in the window as well, to be honest. I think they've got a bit of work to do. And yeah, as you say, I think it's probably a fair result on balance. And you're absolutely right to highlight the performance of Koscielny and Holding. I thought both, Koscielny in particular, was absolutely outstanding yesterday. So good stuff. But the game itself wasn't much, nor was the Sunday second game, which we'll just ping through very quickly, which was the grand opening and hurrah of West Ham United's new Olympic Stadium, or London Park, or whatever the hell they're calling it.
I heard it was going to be the Tesco Stadium.
Tesco Stadium.
I heard that was a genuine story that was floating around.
It is a genuine story, yeah. I do. It would be quite funny, wouldn't it?
It would.
I think chant of the day from the Bournemouth fans was, "Is this the Emirates?" which did make me chuckle. Wasn't much of a game, was it, to be honest? It was a bit dull, a bit drab. The stadium I'm not overly keen on, dare I say it.
No,
but
I'm
good
not.
atmosphere. Yeah, just felt a bit, I don't know, a bit of an anticlimax, really. A late winner from Antonio, wasn't it? That got the late winner. So 3 points for West Ham in a week where they've obviously been travelling to Europe, so they'll be happy with that. But as I say, it wasn't a lot to write home about, was it?
No, I think we're hugely disappointed for Bournemouth because that's the kind of game they really should have got something out of. I didn't get to watch all of it, but what I did see, I was a bit disappointed with Bournemouth. I think they should have taken the game a bit more seriously, as it were. Taking it by the scruff of the neck, I should really say. Jordan Ibe, £15 million. I still have high hopes for him at Bournemouth, but he didn't have a great game today. they just kind of highlighted the reasons I think they might get relegated this year. I just don't think they've got like the same cutting edge and spirit they had with them with Elphick and Ritchie in the side. And then West Ham, they just don't look the same team without Payet. They almost the players don't believe in each other without Payet in it. So give them time. The injuries will fade and Payet will come back to fitness, and they'll look a bit more of a cohesive unit. But it just looked all a bit broken in the final third today. On the stadium, I know it was an Olympic stadium, but it really does feel like it when you're watching the football. It does feel like the fans are miles away. It does feel like a bit of a disconnect. So I do completely agree on that front. But at the same time, stadiums aren't anything until the fans take it to heart and then make something of it. Because I support a club that left the old Dell and moved to St Mary's, and now St Mary's is seen as a well, in my opinion at least. Other people will have to make comment on what they think St Mary's is like. But from what I understand, other people, it's seen as a very passionate stadium now. It's seen as a cauldron. You generate a lot of noise from it. Whereas the old Dell, I know it was very tightly bunched in. It all felt like a bit of a family. Like the fans are on the pitch as well. But you don't have that at the moment with this London Stadium or whatever it ends up being called. So yeah, I'm not keen on it at the moment. But if the fans can get their bubbles going and hang some nice banners or whatever they want to do to it, hopefully it will feel more like home and it will give it a bit more of personality.
If it's anything like Upton Park, they'll just smash it up.
Well, I'm sure. Thinking of it, you can speak of Highbury as well, can't you? To move to the Emirates,
absolutely.
you have to adopt it and make it your own.
Make it your own, yeah. And which we, to be honest, even 5, 10, whatever it is, 5, 6, 7, 8 years now since we moved to the Emirates, I still don't feel like it's probably home yet. So, but a lot of that, as you say, is to do with you get a bigger support base because there's more seats to sell. So, it's tough. It's tough. But West Ham, I'm sure, well, obviously will benefit massively from the cash or expendable cash that they're going to have on the hip now. But we'll see how that turns out for them in the long run. They still have to sign the players, and I hope Jonathan Calieri doesn't miss chances like he did today again, because that was that wasn't good right towards the end. But nevertheless, points for West Ham. Bournemouth, as you say, not sure what to make of them at the moment. Harry Arter's sent off as well late on. Callum Wilson's still finding his way back to fitness. I think he'll score goals for them, to be fair. But yeah, like you, I do worry a bit about Bournemouth. We'll have to see how they get on.
I think it's more sourcing goals that I'm worried about with Bournemouth. Scoring them when the chance is full, great. Callum Wilson's a great finisher. I've seen him plenty in the Championship. I hear he's been linked with Arsenal again because he's a Defoe-esque finisher in that he doesn't need too many chances, but he's also big enough to hold up the ball. He can create his own chances in his own space. But it's about getting the ball into him, and I don't see that at the moment with Bournemouth. I think I will be that, but on the basis of today, he's clearly not there yet.
I would, just for record, I'd take him at Arsenal. By the way, I think he's a very, very good little player.
If he was played for the middle, I'd love to see him at Arsenal. If he gets stuck out wide, then you've.
Oh God, out wide, no, he'd be wasted. But imagine him with a Mesut Ozil creating for him. I think he'd be fantastic. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think if he went to Arsenal, he'd be halfway between being Callum Wilson and being Theo Walcott. So it depends entirely on whether he gets stuck out wide like Theo did, or whether he gets played through the middle.
Agreed, yeah. And I said the same about when the Jamie Vardy links came in. I'll say the same again about Callum Wilson. He reminds me a little bit of a young Ian Wright in the way he plays, the way he links the sort of forward line and his work rate and everything else. So, yeah, we'll watch that one with close interest. The final game of the Premier League weekend, at least, was the is it the Tyne Wear derby? Tyne Tees derby? I get confused which is which.
Tyne Tees, isn't it?
Yeah, Tyne Tees. I think it is, yes. Middlesbrough coming away with the points from Sunderland by 2-1, the victory margin. I thought they overall deserved it, even though Sunderland had a good spell second half. Middlesbrough are making us two look rather silly so far. It seems to be clicking rather nicely. Christian Stuani, former Espanyol midfielder, I must admit I do like quite a lot. He got 2 lovely goals, and one back from Sunderland's point of view. Too little, too late from Van Aanholt. Yes, indeed. So, what did you make of the game overall? It sort of reeked to me a bit of David Moyes still hasn't quite got everything settled. Although that young lad, Gooch, which is a slightly unfortunate name, he looked the part, I thought, and I think Moyes will have enough if he stops signing ex-Man United players. That is.
Weird tease derby. I forget which derby it is now. You got me thinking. So the thing I want to say about Sunderland is that yes, they do look a bit of a broken side at the moment. There's a that is not a scary team. You know, you look at that and you expect to walk over it. I'm sorry, but you do. If you're Arsenal, you expect to get a good number of goals there. I'm loving the fact we've got Sunderland next weekend because we need to go into the international break with a win to boost the fans, to boost the team, just to make sure everyone knows that this is going to work. And I think Sunderland are the perfect opponent for us. So you know, they're not a scary team, and they have a lot of, in my opinion at least, they have a lot of weak links in there. I don't think Love, McNair or Gooch are going to be players that are going to scare people. You know, I think players are going to enjoy playing against them. But at the same time, for as bad as I think the current Sunderland squad is, the flip side of the point on Middlesbrough is that I thought when Sunderland started putting pressure on that Middlesbrough back line, that looked like, you know, a plastic chair in a tornado. It looks so wobbly and all over the place. You put a little bit of pressure on that back line, and it just doesn't look the same. You know, if going forward, they're brilliant. You know, I questioned Alvaro Negredo, and I think last week, preview pod, I forget which now, I said if he stands still and lets everyone else do the running around him, you know, maybe it'll be a success. That's what's happened, and he's coming good so far, which is great to see. But it's the back line that worries me, and Sunderland, they pushed forward for all of 15 minutes at the end, and they just made everyone look so nervous in that back line. I don't think Forshaw or Clayton are as good a holding midfielders as perhaps Middlesbrough could have gotten. I think some of Clayton especially, I think, is better further forward. So I'm still worried for Middlesbrough. You know, I'm still not convinced by them early doors. I mean, the problems with the front line, I think early doors at least, they've proven me wrong on. But the back line, I think, looks really, really wobbly.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I think that's, again, very good points. The back line is the wobble, is the worry, and two sides that you would expect to be lower down the table come the end of the season. But as I say, Middlesbrough currently making us look rather stupid. We'll see how they progress throughout the season. But I suppose we should just. There's no point giving a table at this stage, is there? But we can give people the next fixtures, I suppose, couldn't we? I refuse to read out a league table after 2 games. It just seems mad. But we can give people next week's fixtures, and maybe you can tell us what fixture grips you out of these most. So we have got Tottenham-Liverpool is next Saturday's lunchtime game. Chelsea-Burnley, these are the 3 o'clocks. Crystal Palace-Bournemouth, Everton-Stoke, Leicester-Swansea, Southampton-Sunderland, Watford-Arsenal, Hull City-Manchester United is the late game. West Brom-Middlesbrough is the 1:30 on Sunday, followed by Manchester City-West Ham. Any of those particularly excite you?
Well, clearly Southampton versus Sunderland. Spurs-Liverpool, I think, is the most interesting when you're comparing the two teams that are involved in it. They'll both fancy their chances, I think, so that'll be an interesting watch. Palace-Bournemouth could be a bit of a scrap. That would be, I think, it'd be more interesting to see who wins it than it will be to actually watch the game. But it could be an interesting result, whichever way that falls. The Watford-Arsenal game does interest me because I've now seen Watford 2 weeks in a row, and I'd be fascinated to see the Arsenal fan reaction when Watford inevitably keep a clean sheet or frustrate you for 50 minutes, because they look very good. It will be much like the backlash that Saints fans had last week about, why can't we break down Watford? Well, because he's a damn good manager and organises his team very well. Hull Man
Just
United,
on that,
yep.
Very quickly, just on that, I have a feeling that Watford-Arsenal game, it will either be an absolute cricket score because Arsenal will penetrate and pull that back 3 all over the place, or, as you say, it will be the most frustrating 90 minutes that most Arsenal fans have experienced for many years. Yeah, so it's one or the other, isn't it?
I think Chelsea found that out this weekend as well. They probably expected to go and waltz over Watford, and then they found a very, very tough back 5. Beware of Amrabat. I've just moved Amrabat into my fantasy football team because he looked very good against us. He looked very good against Chelsea as well. So, that will be interesting to watch. I'd be fascinated more so to see the Arsenal fallout, but let's not tempt fate.
Let's not go there.
And then Hull Man United. Obviously, Hull have had this incredible start. I don't see it continuing against Man United. That could be a pulping, or you could get another spirited Hull City performance out of it. So again, that would be interesting. So there's plenty to pick out next week. But if I was only going to pick one, clearly it would be Southampton-Sunderland.
Naturally. Right, let's leave the Premier League behind then. And before we go, we've got, I think we had 1 or maybe 2 questions to answer. Before we get to those, let's go for your EFL Roundup. I feel like I need to get you a sting or something. I'll have to try and get my producer, Gaz, onto that.
Bobby Roode's glorious theme song.
Yeah, I think that's the way forwards. But what we're going to do with the EFL Roundup is, rather than going down the leagues and going right Championship, League 1, League 2, I'm just going to basically give you the floor for roughly 5 minutes. minutes on and off, just to sort of highlight games you want to highlight, incidents you want to highlight, scores you want to highlight. So you let us know which league you want to start off with, or which league you're going to talk about which player from, and I'll let you go for gold. So what happened this weekend?
Well, I'm just going to have a quick flick through League Two, because League Two, I raise my hands and admit, I don't know as well as I know League One and the Championship. With Southampton being in them, I kind of feel a bit more familiar and have a bit more of a connection with them. League Two, I don't normally touch. So a quick glance through the League Two fixtures tells me there weren't too many upsets or shocks. The nice thing will be for Portsmouth fans who have had a really rough time of it the first couple of games. They are expected to run away with this league this time round because of how close they came last season. It's the same team, it's the same course, the same manager. It's the first time that Portsmouth have been consistent in the players and their management since they came down to League Two. This was meant to be their year. They've had a very tough start, but they got a very nice 2-0 win over Colchester. So that's a great sign for them. Aside from that, I'm not seeing too many shocking results from League Two. So unfortunately, League Two fans, going to have to leave you behind to move straight into League One, where there's some really cool stuff happening. Scunthorpe put 5 past Gillingham this weekend, which is a ridiculous scoreline, all things considered. The other notable ones, the biggest story currently in League One is Sheffield United, who took the Northampton boss, whose name escapes me, Chris Wilder.
Chris Wilder, yeah.
Yeah, they took him from Northampton, who have come up and had a steady enough start. They got another 0-0. It's 4 draws now for Northampton. But the new Sheffield United boss is yet to win. 1 draw and 3 defeats is his current record. They sit bottom of the league. Sheffield United fans are already upset. So it seems every single year League One starts and it's, who's going to go up this year? It's going to be Sheffield United this year. It's going to be Sheffield United. They're too big a club to be in League One, and they're still here. So I hope Kris does well and can turn that around. But that's such a bad start, and he really didn't need that kind of club. Bolton, 4th win in a row. That's again another brilliant start for Bolton. I'm surprised that they're doing better than Charlton were, because Charlton got a 2-1 win over Walsall. But Charlton had a very rough start with a loss and a draw that I know the fans weren't particularly happy with. Some questions already over whether Russell Slade's going to be the manager to take them back up. I still think he will. He's a dull but consistent manager, and I think Charlton needs dull and consistent after their previous league forms. But Bolton, 4 wins on the trot now. That's a fantastic start for them. That was 2-1 over Fleetwood. So some interesting results to pick out from League One. Good starts for some of the bigger teams, and then one horrific start for the team we all thought was going to go up this year. Clearly, the Championship is where I really want to focus on. I loved this weekend's Championship fixtures. Some really, really great results and some amazing goals. I was about to say the big one. There are far too many big ones. Let's start at the very top of the list in front of me. Sheffield Wednesday lost to Leeds. Didn't see that coming. Forestieri. No, I know. It's ridiculous to think, but Forestieri's now back in the Sheffield Wednesday squad. I think he said he's going to stay now, unless obviously Newcastle come up with another bid and change all of it. But Sheffield Wednesday seemed to have settled things down with Forestieri, but they looked so poor against Leeds, couldn't break down that back line. And for a team that's had such a bad start, and Massimo Cellino has already apparently got a bit of a trigger finger with poor old Gary Monk, to win 2-0 is away from home as well. Great result for them. Wolves are the ones I'm following closely after their takeover. I was sceptical, but you can't argue with the results. 2 wins, 2 draws. They've looked very comfortable. Came from a goal behind against Birmingham. They've certainly got a lot of bottle. And I was talking to Drew the other day. He asked me to predict my top 6, and Wolves are now in my top 6. That's how impressed I've been with them early doors. Blackburn finally stemming the tide, 2-2 with Burton. For all the things we said in the preview pod about maybe Burton won't be scoring enough, 9 goals Burton have scored so far in 4 games. They've conceded 9. So everything we said in the preview pod about Burton, swap it round and then we're completely bang on. But bizarre start from Burton, brilliant to see. Newcastle getting a decent result against Bristol City. Fulham and Cardiff drawing. I didn't see that coming because Cardiff were awful. But considering the quality of the 2 Cardiff City goals, can't deny them. Huddersfield, they're top of the league, 10 points. We were questioning them in the preview pod as well. Absolutely brilliant start, 2-1 win over Barnsley. Preston beating QPR, didn't see that coming either. Reading and Brighton with a 2-2 draw. Rotherham beating Brentford. I still think Rotherham will go down, but they're swinging for the fences. The big result and the big thing I do want to pick out on is Nottingham Forest Wigan, which ended 4-3. Another fantastic game with Nottingham Forest. Montagnier still hasn't really clicked that the Championship is never give up. He seems to score a goal and then kind of think, right, let's keep the ball. You can't do that. Teams will break on you. And that's happened with Burton. It's now happened with Wigan. The thing I want to say about Nottingham Forest is Oliver Burke. I mentioned him last week. I have a man crush on him already. It's going to be so great when he breaks free from Nottingham Forest and makes it big, because everyone will want to know where Oliver Burke came from. He's Scottish, he's a winger, he just looks so good. I've just done a scout report on him for another website that I write for, and in that, speculatively, but I still said it, speculatively, I think he could be for Scotland what Bale is for Wales if he gets the right clubs to bring him on. And we've already got Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, Sunderland, Southampton all linked with him already. Going to be huge. So if you don't know who he is yet, go find some YouTube clips, follow Nottingham Forest, keep an eye on him. He's just going to be such big news.
Definitely one to keep an eye on. There's a few in the Championship. I must admit, I am trying my best, Ross. I'm trying to keep across. I've got the old highlights recorded every week now, and I refuse to watch that abortion on Channel 5. I can't. I can't
it's awful, isn't it?
Oh, just can't do it. So I like the Sky coverage, but I'm trying to keep up with results, and I'm trying to keep on top of the EFL stuff this year. So we will have plenty of discussion, and I know we were talking a few weeks ago about doing maybe a bi-monthly review of EFL sort of podcast. So I think I am going to do that with you. I think we'll just do it. We'll treat it as like an interview with you every couple of months. I think we'll just so you can have a little bit of a wax lyrical about your players, and again, when we do our transfer pod, be good for you to keep an eye on the Championship transfers that go through as well on that day. So we will definitely be across the Championship. Weirdly, hot off the press this is, actually had some of our highest listens ever to that Championship preview pod. So
yeah, it was very impressive. I'll look back at the views. It's clearly that the Championship's more interesting than some people thought it was.
Yeah, I think it's good because a lot of podcasts don't really cover it in too much detail, and obviously it's something you follow with great love. So it's good to show some love. And when I know there is a time of the season is a non-league day.
Yes.
Where sort of non-league clubs do get in for cheap prices and that. I think it'd be nice if you and I get together at some point, maybe for that, for 20 minutes or so, and just talk about some of the teams that have put on sort of cheap prices and some of the teams that people won't be familiar with. So we'll try and organise that later in the season as well. Anywho, okay, so shall we finish with a question or two? Because I think I put out a tweet earlier on. Just for anyone listening to this, if you obviously, when we get into the swing of our regular pods, we will put out tweets for questions. But if there is any tweets that you, or any questions you have for the podcast that you want to get in early, please use Ross's Twitter handle at Ross Bramble, or myself at AFCFreddy8, and just use use our Twitter handles and at the FH podcast, just so we don't miss them, because occasionally a few slip through the net and people send us them through the week, and sometimes we lose track. So if you've got a question, you don't necessarily need to wait for us to tweet asking for them. Just chuck them our way and we'll make a note. So if there's anything you want to know, do that. We've just had the one this week. It comes from Brian at Donaldson_Brian, and he wants to know, Ross, I'll ask you this. What do you think is the most important part of the season schedule for teams looking for European Champions League and Europa League football?
What, for qualifying, or when you're already in it?
I'm guessing he means qualifying, but maybe either or, I suppose.
Well, I'll find out this year because it's Southampton's first trip through the Europa League. I think for us it's going to be the November-Christmas period where you kind of get the tail end of the Europa League games, and then the Premier League fixtures come thick and fast, and then suddenly you've got to deal with League Cup games. If you're talking about teams that are in these competitions, it's November-December kind of period for me. Qualification, I suppose the Arsenal method's always the best one, isn't it? Which is, don't worry about how you do early doors, just make sure you're there at the end. And everyone kind of panics because teams get relegated, so they're fighting for points, and as long as you're in and around at the end of the year, you've got a fair shout. So I'd probably say it's the last 2 months of the season. As long as you're ready for the race, then that's where the sprint begins. So for me, it's probably there.
Yeah, good question that. And
I mean, Kris, you could probably tell us more about it because you qualify every year.
Well, yeah. I mean, now I've said that, we won't this season. But which is the most important part? I mean, it's difficult, I suppose, because for Europa League, obviously, it's a longer competition, and you can, you stretch out your performances over a longer period because the group stage is longer. I think for the Champions League clubs in particular, the big part of the season is when you're through the group stages, because that's when you really are going to meet some of the top-notch opposition. But at the same time, I think you've also got to rotate your squad during the group stage. If you're already qualified, or if you can afford to rest some players, or indeed if you have to play your first team all the way through, and you do what Arsenal have done many seasons seasons where it goes to the last game, you are essentially doubling your workload with your players. So I think it is key. Weirdly, I think this season's Champions League, do tune in, of course, to the Satchel Pod with myself and John throughout the season. We'll be covering all those games, but we might even have you on at some point, Ross, to cover Southampton's games. I just thought of that.
I will get absolutely hammered by someone now.
You never know. But yeah, I think throughout this season it'll be very interesting because there's a lot of clubs this season that have spent big, specifically with the task of taking on the Champions League. I look at PSG, I look at Juventus, I look at Roma. Obviously, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich will always be there. Borussia Dortmund are going to go again. Man City, absolutely. Man United. Oh no, wait, hang on. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But there's a lot of clubs that I think will have a serious tilt at the Champions League this year. So it'll be very interesting to see just how many, because obviously they can't all go through. And even teams like a Monaco who are getting through, they've reassembled a very good squad. So there'll be a few dark horses, and it could be an exciting group stage. The draw is made Friday, I think, this Friday coming. So keep an eye out for those. I'm sure we'll tweet the draws from our podcast account, so keep an eye on those. But it's a good question, that, Brian. We appreciate it, and thank you for tweeting in. Thank you very much. Right, I think that will kind of do it for this week, Ross. A couple of things to plug very briefly. Thank you to all of our listeners, as we said, from listening to the preview pods. If you haven't already, technically you're late because most of the leagues other than Germany are underway now. But if you have missed them, we've done an Italian, a German, a Premier League, a Championship downwards. We've also done a Spanish. Tom's done a Spanish one, and a German Bundesliga pod as well, and of course the Liga pod. So we've previewed all the leagues, and they're all still available on our YouTube channel. So you can go and have a look at those and see how they're getting on. I think Drew's looking after the fantasy football. I think, from memory, Drew's looking after that.
I've already forgotten that I was doing it until this weekend when I realised Amrabat had to go in. So I don't expect to be doing brilliantly this season.
No, my team is. I'll have to read my team next week when we got more time. But yeah, my team's doing all right, I think. So, touch wood. But yes, do keep across those. We're getting some YouTube comments and stuff. That's really good as well. That's all this excellent feedback. We've had some really nice comments from people, so thank you for that. We are going to bring back our lovable segment, Ross's Boss and Ross's Dross, before we go. So, Ross, who have you decided to pull out for this week's Boss?
It's not one you're going to disagree with. Laurent Koscielny. For me, yes. I thought his performance by himself was brilliant, but I also think what he did for Rob Holding was absolutely top class. If you ask fans that watched him last year, the biggest criticism of Rob Holding was whether or not he should or shouldn't leave the line, and I thought that Koscielny did brilliantly in teaching him when to stay back and when to go forward. And Koscielny's performance by himself was just brilliant. I think he thought he looked like a real leader and a real captain during that game. So for me, it's Laurent Koscielny.
Love it. Gets my vote. And what about your Dross? This is always the interesting one.
Yeah, I'm going to move the goalpost a little bit on this because I don't know of any statutes and limitations on my Dross. So I'm going to go to Wednesday's fixture list. I'm going to go to Cardiff versus Blackburn, and I'm going to pick Shane Duffy for his 2 own goals and his red card against Cardiff.
Yeah, he didn't have the best week, did he, old Duffs? No. Turned down a new contract or something, didn't he, and wants to leave, and then turned in that performance. It's like, okay, awkward. Yeah, not the best. I wouldn't be walking in the path of any black cats if I was you, Mr. Duffy. But yes, no, I think you definitely can move the goalpost for such an epic fail of a week for a player. So, yeah, I'll give you that one. Definitely. Superb. Okay, so that's the Ross's Dross and Boss for another week. The only other things to plug really is, as usual, you can subscribe via YouTube, subscribe via iTunes. Our Twitter account is at the FH Podcast. We do 2 podcasts a week, as well as a satchel during the season. We do our main podcast. We record on a Monday night for release on Tuesday. That will start again tomorrow, so that should be up this Tuesday coming. We do the English breakfast, what we've done tonight, every Sunday. Usually it's released the same night, all being well. And the Satchel Pod is our European version, which myself and John do when the Champions League or Europa League is on, so keep an eye on that as well. And throughout the season, we of course do interviews with various different people when we can drag them on for a little chat. The only other thing I want to mention is we are going to be opening a GoFundMe page. which is basically us begging for money. No, it's not. It's we've had quite a few requests from our loyal listeners that they would like us to be on SoundCloud. A lot of listeners do like to pick up SoundCloud feeds, so we are all not exactly blessed with piles of cash here at the FH podcast. So, and we've just paid out quite a lot of money for our website resubscription. So we're not exactly minted here. So we're going to open a GoFundMe page. And anybody that wants to make a contribution of a couple of quid, we're not asking for hundreds, so please don't send us anything you can't afford. Just a couple of quid would be fantastic. And if we can raise enough to pay for SoundCloud, we will get a SoundCloud feed put into into our into our feed, I suppose. We will drop in SoundCloud each week. So if that's something that you guys would like, we will do our very best. And if we can raise enough money, we will do that. If you do want to make a donation and you don't know how, we will be plugging the page in the coming days. But if you want to know any more information, just drop us a direct message at the Hipsters account, and we will gladly take your inquiry. So there we go. Right, Ross. Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. You'll be back this time next week, no doubt.
I shall indeed.
Good stuff. Where we can review another hot weekend of Premier League and Football League action. So until then, thank you very much for listening. As always, we really appreciate it. Enjoy your football. Keep it tuned to the Hipsters. And we will speak to you on the main pod in 48 hours and back for the English breakfast next Sunday.